Hello everybody, this is RBR short from 13, aka Ryan, and today I'm doing a review of Spider-Man No Way Home, a spoiler-free review. I literally just did a 20-minute video and didn't realize I had my headphones plugged in, the USB. So the whole time I was talking, the audio didn't even capture it. So I have to kind of redo this, and I'll do it much shorter this time around. But this is what I went to see it. Spider-Man IMAX, No Way Home. Incredible. I'd say this is definitely my favorite superhero movie after Justice League, the Snyder Cut. And originally my favorite superhero films were The Dark Knight, Batman Returns, Christopher Reeve Superman, Superman 1 and 2. A lot of those superhero films, Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2, all those films. But Zack Snyder's Justice League, Spider-Man No Way Home, these are definitely the best superhero films in my opinion. And it's coming a lot for me from someone who loves the original Spider-Man 2. I grew up with that video game when they actually had good Mysterio. It wasn't that Mysterio that they had in Far From Home. There was actually Mysterio from the comics in that video game. I remember that old Spider-Man 2 video game had Shocker, it had Black Cat, it had a lot of good villains and characters in that game. I almost would love to see, of course, you know, done a little differently, and maybe taken a little more seriously, but the way that video game was, that old Spider-Man 2 video game, I would love to see that be turned into a movie in some capacity. I would love to see Spider-Man with Black Cat finally. We've had Gwen Stacy, we've had Mary Jane, we've had those love interests, you know, for Peter. It would be nice to see Black Cat. She is the Catwoman, you know, for Spider-Man. So it would be really interesting because then that's a character that Spider-Man wouldn't have to try to protect or, you know, or anything like that. Black Cat could protect him if he's in a situation. So hopefully, you know, we get to see stuff like that in the future. I always wanted to see a Spider-Man Carnage movie. Let's hope one day we do get a Spider-Man Carnage film. So I saw Venom, Let There Be Carnage this year, and that was really cool. That was probably the most, in terms of like Spider-Man's characters, I probably had the most fun. I was not a big fan of Tom Holland's Spider-Man films, the Homecoming and Far From Home. I tried to get into them. I gave them a chance, and I saw both of them in the theater, but I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get into it. I loved Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man films and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I grew up with those Spider-Mans. Tobey Maguire Spider-Man kind of always be my favorite. I think mainly nostalgia. He was the Spider-Man that I was introduced to when I was my God. The first one came out in 2002, so I would have been 6. I would have been 6.5 when I saw that. I still remember it. I still remember seeing that in the theater, and yeah, those were a lot of fun memories. And I remember when the video games came out, like back then we had the GameCube and the PS2, and you know, Spider-Man 2 video game. That original, now no longer today, of course. Like the old Spider-Man game doesn't really hold up anymore, but the old Spider-Man 2 game still holds up, in my opinion. I will play that probably. I play that every year actually. I play that once a year. I'll play the whole story mode because that's one of my favorite video games. I was never the biggest fan of Spider-Man 3, even though I loved the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, like the first 2, especially the second one, because the second one is one of my favorite movies. I just couldn't get into the third movie. I really tried. And I remember seeing that as a kid, it was a lot easier to sit through it. I think that would have been a lot harder to sit through as an adult. But there were still a couple really cool moments I remember in Spider-Man 3. It's just, they overdid it with the villains. So it was cool that when the Amazing Spider-Man came out with Andrew Garfield, that it was only the Lizard that was in it, which the Lizard's one of my favorites. And I was hoping to see a Sam Raimi's take on the Lizard, actually. I think he would have done something really cool. But it was cool to see that. And then Electro was cool. I would say that his design in No Way Home is a lot better than the design that he had in Amazing Spider-Man 2. They definitely revamped his look, and Green Goblin. Green Goblin looks so much better too. But I don't think that's like really. I'm trying to really spoil anything. It's just stuff was already in the trailers, so I'm sure you guys have seen what's in the trailers. That stuff. It was great to see villains that I grew up with those old films, and even like my teenage years. Like I was 16 when The Amazing Spider-Man came out, and then I was 17 when Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out. So those were the Spider-Mans I grew up with. Tom Holland Spider-Man, he didn't come around until I was like 21. It was 2016. So yeah, I was 21 when Tom Holland was introduced as Spider-Man. And I thought he was great. His introduction in Civil War. I enjoyed him in Infinity War and Endgame. He was great in all those. I just never could enjoy his solo films. They were lacking something. Like I say, lacking substance. It was lacking something that the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films had. This movie surprised me quite a bit. It was extremely funny. It had great adventure, heart, powerful messages. It reminded me a lot of how movies used to be. Like when I was growing up, it has a lot of that. The way the old superhero movies used to be, where they had a certain heart to them. This movie has that a lot, and even Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League had a big heart, that movie, and they're bringing that back with superhero films, but this movie definitely had that magic that the original movies had. This took me back a lot to how great those Sam Raimi Spider-Man films were, the first two. I was like, wow, this is what the franchise has been missing, which is good nostalgia, not bad nostalgia. You want Spider-Man to be, like the comics. You want it, but you still, because I feel like the filmmaker that did the best job with the Spider-Man franchise, aside from Spider-Man 3, was Sam Raimi. And what he got right about those films was that he seemed to understand the heart of the story and the meanings behind it, and I just felt like he hit all the right notes with those first two movies, especially the second one, more so the second one. But this film definitely had a lot of that, and it had a lot of heart, and I just enjoyed that I got to see a Spider-Man film that reminded me of the old films. So, that they had the old Doc Ock in it and the old Green Goblin. That was so great. Willem Dafoe was terrifying in this movie. Not going to give anything away, but he did a great acting job. Dr. Octavius, it was great to see him. He was the best part of the original Spider-Man 2. Another big part why I love that movie. So it was great that he was back in this, and the old villains looked the same, they sounded the same, acted the same. I mean, it was nostalgia done right. And we even got to see Electro, and they gave Jamie Foxx a better design. It was great to see the Lizard, uh, and yeah, it was just great to see these characters, these villains that. What I remember. I just remember these villains growing up, and it's like to see them all back in a Spider-Man film. It's like, whoa. So then you have Tom Holland's Spider-Man happen to deal with all of them, and happen to, he has to confront all these villains. So I'm sure, a lot of people are aware of the multiverse. That stuff was in the trailer. Because Peter messed with the spell, of course, everything changed, and then those villains come in. I really, really enjoyed it. I love this movie. It's definitely, I'm not going to say tied with Spider-Man 2. I mean, I really want to say that, but this movie was, oh man, it is definitely the greatest Spider-Man film. I recommend it to anyone that's a Spider-Man fan. I think many superhero fans would love this movie. It was kind of bigger than Endgame, to be honest, even though Endgame was pretty big. That was a pretty big superhero film. That was a huge film, and that was like 3 hours. So it's hard for me to say that it is bigger than Endgame, but at the same time, it kind of is bigger than Endgame. Um, for the reason of that also is Spider-Man 3, the original Spider-Man 3 failed because they used too many villains. It was 3 villains in one movie, and that's what was the problem with that film. Had it only been 1 or 2 villains, I probably would say Spider-Man 3 is a decent flick. And sadly, I can't say that. Um, they rushed, one of the they rushed Venom in the original Spider-Man 3, and that was like their biggest mistake. Um, but this movie has even more than 3 villains, and they managed to do a way better job than that film. I never felt like the villains were overshoved; they were overdone. I feel like they all had their time to shine, and they all had they had their purpose in the plot. So it was really awesome that the villains were executed right and they weren't done bad, and it didn't feel overshoved like Spider-Man 3. This was definitely Spider-Man 3 done better, kind of like a remake of Spider-Man 3, to be honest. And it was great. Tom Holland keeps getting better as Spider-Man. His acting keeps getting better and better. The movie was shot well. The movie was incredible looking. The CGI is probably the best CGI I've seen. This is Marvel, of course, the people that obviously did Endgame, Infinity War. These are the CGI masters. These are the people that can do better than any other CGI company. I mean, if this is ILM, that would make a lot of sense. If this is an ILM, I'd be surprised. I was watching the credits and I didn't read ILM on there, but maybe I just didn't notice. But I always feel like ILM has involvement because I think ILM did the Avengers movies because they did the Star Wars films. But the CGI was like even better than Star Wars. This movie, it had incredible amounts of. I mean, the CGI never was distracting. None of it looked bad. It all looked real. It all felt authentic. You believed what was happening. You believed the illusion. The movie wasn't even in 3D, or at least I didn't see it in 3D. But I saw it in IMAX, and I recommend anyone to see this movie in IMAX over seeing it in a regular projection, even though you're still going to get that experience, though, because you're going to get the sound. Watching this at home is not the way to watch it, because there's no way home to watch this movie. Anyway, it would be cool if this was on Disney Plus, so like I could go ahead and watch it right now after seeing it in the theater. But I'll have to try to see it again, or I'll have to wait, till Blu-ray when it comes out. That's always the hardest, when a movie's that great and you have to wait. Definitely one of my favorite superhero movies. It's definitely my favorite after Justice League. And oh wow, the impossible was possible in this movie. The impossible happened, which is, of course, executing so many things that so many movies get wrong or easily can get wrong. So go see this movie. If you love Spider-Man, you love Marvel, you love these characters, you like Doctor Strange, you like, you like this universe that the MCU and what Sony's been doing, and everything. If you want to see a mix of Sony and Marvel, this is the movie. And this is definitely the most beautiful collab I have seen between MCU and between Marvel and Sony. This was incredible. So go see it. I would talk more about this movie if of course a lot of people have seen this movie, but of course not. The movie was opening weekend. I saw it Monday, on the 20th, and I literally just saw a 6:30 p.m. showing. It's now 10. So I'm reviewing this movie right when I get out of the theater for it. And oh wow, yeah, I cried to it too. I didn't cry to it as much as I did to the Snyder Cut Justice League when I first saw it. But same, that's how I reacted though with Justice League. I cried more and more to that movie the more I watched it, because then I was able to take more and more in, because it's a lot to take in at first. You know, when you try to wrap everything up in a two and a half hour movie, or even in a 4 hour movie, you know, it's a lot to take in. When so much is happening in the film. But that's good though, because you want a lot happening. You don't want it to drag. This movie doesn't drag. It has great pacing, and it was over like that, like it was incredibly paced. And I could tell this movie had a lot of screenings, a lot of test screenings, and because my audience was the best audience that I've had in since the Scream re-release. People were applauding, cheering, clapping, and you know the way that you know people should react to these kinds of movies. You know, uh, definitely they reacted that way. So I felt like this going back to the movies experience. You know, like I've gotten that with Halloween Kills, with you know any recent films that I've seen in the theater. It's just nice to see, you know, audiences involved in movies again. You know, and it's no longer you're just kind of watching it by yourself. Um, but yeah, definitely recommend it. Go see it. I can't stop talking about this movie. Uh, and it's very hard not to talk about really my favorite parts, because I just can't. You guys have to see the film. And once you guys do, I'll do a spoiler review of it through a live stream. And it'll be, you know, say what, a couple weeks from now, or a week from now. Not a week from now. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. People have to go see this movie, you know. They gotta see it, and you know, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. So anyway, everybody go see this, and you'll not be disappointed. That's my review, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great holiday. Happy holidays, guys. You know, December 25th is coming up, and we're in late December. Tomorrow will be the first day of winter. And yeah, so here we go, guys. Thanks for watching my review, and talk to you guys soon. All right, peace.